Welcome to another nightmare narrative. Art of the Hitcher. Those who stop never reach their destination. Meanwhile, the police had expanded their search efforts after the discovery of 3 additional bodies. Despite their best efforts, they were still baffled, unable to discern any motive for the killings. The murders appeared disturbingly random, with the only common thread being their proximity to the highway. The media, hungry for answers, pressed for explanations, putting even more pressure on law enforcement. In response, the police made a public appeal, urging anyone who recently picked up a hitchhiker to come forward. They had pieced together a chilling theory. The killer was likely targeting Good Samaritans who stopped to offer rides. It was a daunting task. The police suspected anyone who had given the hitchhiker a ride had probably fallen victim to him. Yet, the possibility of finding a survivor, no matter how slim, drove their efforts. What shocked investigators most was the number of people still picking up hitchhikers despite the public warnings. The influx of tips was overwhelming. Among the genuine leads were numerous false claims from individuals seeking attention, wasting valuable time and resources. A few suspects were questioned, but none could be connected to the murders. Despite repeated announcements on television and radio, many people remained uninformed or indifferent. It was a sobering reality. Not everyone listened to the news or took warnings seriously. The police faced an uphill battle, racing against time to stop a killer who thrived on the kindness of strangers. Harvey's travels had again brought him to a remote, quiet stretch of road. Sitting under the sparse shade of a towering gum tree, he idly waved at the occasional passing cars, more out of boredom than any real expectation of being picked up. Most vehicles zipped by without a second glance, but then a little red Volkswagen drove past, slowed, and turned around. Curious, Harvey watched as the car pulled up beside him. The window rolled down, revealing a woman in her late 30s with kind but tired eyes. "Do you need a lift?" she asked, her tone friendly yet cautious. Harvey hadn't even bothered sticking out his thumb, but he nodded gratefully. "Yes, please," he replied, flashing a polite smile as he climbed into the car. He offered the usual story about his car breaking down. The woman introduced herself as Karen, explaining with a faint smile that she wasn't the type to pick up hitchhikers. "But you looked like you could use some help," she said, glancing at him. "And, honestly, I could use the company on this long drive." Karen was warm and unassuming, and Harvey found her easy to talk to. As they cruised along the highway, she began to open up about her life. Her voice wavered as she shared her story. "My husband," she began, pausing to steady herself. "He was diagnosed with a brain tumor not long after we got married. We had so many plans, so much we wanted to do together." She trailed off, dabbing at her eyes before continuing. "He passed away just a couple of years into our marriage. That was a year ago now. I'm still trying to figure out how to live without him. Every day feels like climbing a mountain, and most days, I don't even feel like I'm making it halfway." Harvey listened quietly, nodding at the appropriate moments, sensing that Karen wasn't looking for advice but simply needed someone to hear her. Despite the sorrow etched into her words, she seemed determined to carry on, and he couldn't help but admire her quiet resilience. The drive stretched on, the rhythm of the road and Karen's voice filling the silence. Though they were strangers, a small connection had formed, one born of shared humanity and the simple act of kindness that had brought them together. In Harvey's mind, Karen's story became a cue that she might not want to live. While he did find her tale profoundly sad, even relatable, it echoed his loss of Jet. He couldn't allow sentiment to deter him from his purpose. Tragedy, in his eyes, was a thread that bound many lives together, but it also presented an opportunity. As Karen poured her heart out, Harvey let his hand drift to his pocket, where he had already prepared a few syringes while idling under the gum tree. It was his twisted ritual, a way to bide his time and maintain control over the narrative of his encounters. He waited patiently, letting Karen's words fade into silence. The only sound left was the hum of the tires on the highway, but then Karen reached over and turned on the radio. The broadcast that came on made her pause. "This This is an urgent message from local authorities. Police are seeking information about a series of murders linked to hitchhikers in the area. Anyone who has picked up a hitchhiker should come forward. Karen frowned, glancing at Harvey. I hadn't heard about this, she said, her voice tinged with concern. It's awful. The world's such a terrible place sometimes. Isn't it? It's shattering that people can do things like that. Harvey's hand slid deeper into his pocket, carefully removing the cap from the syringe. He turned slightly in his seat, watching her as she kept her eyes on the road. He offered a faint nod, his tone calm, almost conversational. It is terrible, he said, lifting the syringe. So much pain out there. In one swift motion, he plunged the needle into her thigh. Karen gasped, her eyes widening as realization struck. What? She stammered, her voice trailing off. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel as she steered the car off the road, the tires crunching onto the gravel shoulder. She knew there was no escape. Whatever was in that syringe was already coursing through her veins. Harvey watched her with an unsettling stillness as she slumped against the seat. Her breaths came in shallow gasps before her body went limp. The silence returned, broken only by the faint hiss of static on the radio. Harvey sat there for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, methodically, he reached over and turned off the ignition. The little red Volkswagen sat still on the deserted roadside, a quiet witness to another of Harvey's dark chapters. It was the perfect place, scrubby bushland stretching endlessly in every direction, secluded and silent. Harvey had always appreciated it when things worked out this way. It felt neat, purposeful, and, in his twisted mind, an oddly fitting conclusion to Karen's life. Exiting the car, he walked to the driver's side, carefully undoing Karen's seatbelt. Her lifeless body slumped slightly, but Harvey moved with ease, lifting her out of the seat and cradling her in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, as though her grief had weighed heavier than her physical form. The scrub was thick, but Harvey navigated it without hesitation, pushing past branches until he found an appropriate spot. It was a clearing, with sunlight filtering through the sparse canopy above. He lowered Karen gently to the ground, almost tenderly, as if she were merely sleeping. As he stepped back, something caught his eye, the jacket she'd kept on the back seat of her car. It was a mundane detail, but it lingered in his mind. He returned to the Volkswagen, retrieving the jacket with deliberate care. Walking back to where Karen lay, he knelt and placed it neatly beside her, smoothing it out with his hands. It was, in Harvey's mind, a gesture of finality, almost respect. The jacket, a personal belonging, would stay with her, something to mark the spot as if to say she had mattered in some small way. The jacket would make a perfect canvas. During their conversation in the car, Karen explained how she had thought about cutting her wrists at one stage when her husband had first passed away. Harvey decided that it would be appropriate to cut both of her wrists with his surgical knife, then make a second cut in the crease of her elbow and cut it down to meet the wrist cut. Then he delicately chopped off the part by flapping it down. He removed her eyes and put them on his canvas after cutting off part of the arteries to create a circle for the face. He made a frown out of her lips after removing them. When Harvey discovered his canvas wasn't complete, he searched his bag to find the small bracelet he had purchased. He cut the thread on the bracelet and put some teardrop beads under her eyes. He had placed 4 rocks on the corners of the jacket so it wouldn't fly away. He stood there for a moment, surveying the scene. The quiet bushland enveloped him, the distant hum of the highway barely audible. Satisfied, Harvey turned and made his way back to the car. He had no regrets, only the quiet satisfaction of someone who believed they had orchestrated the perfect end. Harvey, meticulous as ever, rinsed his hands with a bottle of water he'd purchased earlier, scrubbing away any trace of his work. He wiped down his tools methodically, ensuring no evidence would be left behind. Once satisfied, he stashed everything neatly in his bag, returned to the car, and drove off, leaving nothing but the quiet bushland to keep Karen company. It was weeks before Karen's body was found. Her parents had reported her missing when she failed to arrive for her father's 60th birthday party, a celebration she had been looking forward to. Desperate for answers, they explained to the police that Karen had been driving from her home but never made it. Fortunately, Karen's car was equipped with a tracker, allowing authorities to locate it abandoned near the scrubland. Starting from the vehicle's location, they began their search. Using a piece of Karen's clothing provided by her parents, the search dogs quickly picked up her scent. It wasn't long before they found her body, though what remained of her was hardly recognizable. The weather and animals tore into Karen's body. Her once recognizable appearance was now a terrible, mangled state, and her lips and eyelids were gone, probably taken by scavenger animals. Birds of prey had picked at her remains, indifferent to the identity of the dead. The scene was horrific, and the officers who found her struggled to contain their emotions. When the police informed Karen's parent, they tried their best to explain the tragic circumstances with sensitivity. No amount of delicacy could ease the weight of their loss. Meanwhile, the case grew increasingly urgent. Bodies were piling up on the evidence board, each connected by a chilling pattern yet offering little solid leads. Harvey, now well practiced in his dark craft, had left few clues behind. However, a breakthrough came when investigators examined Karen's belongings more closely. The bracelet beads, a simple item, led them to its source, finding service stations where the bracelets had been sold. With this connection, the police painstakingly sifted through hours of surveillance footage from these locations. And there he was. Harvey's face appeared on one of the tapes. It was a fleeting glimpse, weeks old by the time they found it, but it was confirmation that he was the man they were hunting. Though they were still far behind him, they finally had a lead, a starting point. Now, the arduous task of tracking Harvey's movements began. The police worked tirelessly to piece together his road practices, hoping to predict his next move before he could strike again. Remember to like, subscribe, and share to others, so you don't miss an episode.